New this morning, the Wagner military group is threatening to leave the Ukrainian city of Bakhmut. This is in the eastern part of the country where we've seen some of the fiercest fighting. Wagner's leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin, says his troops are running out of ammunition. So this private military group has played a key role in Russia's war in Ukraine. But they've also been engaged in this backroom bickering with the Russian Defense Ministry. With me now is retired U.S. Army Brigadier General Steve Anderson. General, thanks so much for being with us. Two questions about this claim from the Wagner Group here. Number one, and I'm not sure we believe him, first of all, but if Wagner did pull out of Bakhmut, what would that mean for the military situation there? But two, and perhaps more importantly, what does this bickering tell us about discipline and coordination inside the Russian military?
Well, thank you, John. What it tells us is that it's a really bad army, and they've got a lot of issues. I mean, mercenaries make great security guards. They don't make good soldiers, and we're seeing that play out right here. I mean, obviously, this is be a terrible blow to the Russian military. They're trying to fight for the city of Bakhmut. Can imagine if General Patton, in the middle of his assault on Germany in 1944, had said, hey, you know, I'm not getting all the ammo I need. I'm pulling the Third Army out of this fight here. I mean, it's ridiculous. It just shows how poorly led, how poorly equipped, how poorly trained, and what a bad army that the Russian army is. They're 10 years away from being a competent fighting force.
General, a key piece of reporting from our Alex Marquardt, our senior Pentagon reporter, and his team, saying that the Ukrainians on the ground and U.S. officials are concerned that the Russians have been able to electronically jam the guidance system of the HIMARS. This is the artillery rocket system that the U.S. has been providing to the Ukrainians that has shown some success on the ground. How significant would that be?
Well, it is significant. I mean, you need the HIMARS to conduct the deep strikes that they're going to need. I mean, if they're going to conduct a counteroffensive, they're going to have to achieve a breakthrough somewhere, and they're going to have to use their superior maneuver, their ability to integrate indirect fire, direct fire, and aviation. And of course, the HIMARS is a very key component of this indirect fire capability. My big concern with the HIMARS is the maintenance requirements. I mean, my understanding is that many of them, perhaps as much as 50%, are not operational. We don't have the maintenance capability and the repair parts to keep those things operational. The jamming, though, of course, is an issue. We just need more HIMARS systems, and we need to use those HIMARS systems effectively, and that means maintaining them appropriately.
You talked about this potential Ukrainian counteroffensive here. I have a map of Ukraine. I just want to show people the Dnieper River here, which is this one of the world's key waterways, but a strategically important waterway in Ukraine right now. You can see it divides the Ukrainian forces and the Russian forces toward the south of the country. Where do you think it would be important for Ukraine to strike if it can?
Well, they've got about a 400-mile front there. The good news is that the Russians are spread thin, and what they've got to do, they've got to find one place, a weakness in that front, and they need to penetrate. And in order to, and then they've got to be conducting an envelopment that gets around them, because they're not going to be able to go toe-to-toe with the Russians. I mean, the Russians are too strong. They've probably got a couple 100,000 troops in there now, and they're dug in. They've been there for a year. They're preparing great defensive operations and defensive mechanisms in each area. So they've got to be able to find a weakness in the wall, they've got to penetrate it, and then they've got to use their superior maneuver, their ability to integrate aviation, ground, direct fire, and indirect fire, all of that in a synergistic effect to defeat and envelop the Russian army.
General Steve Anderson, always great to talk to you. Thanks so much for being with us today.
The Wagner mercenary chief is slamming Russian defense officials in a scathing, expletive-laden tirade. And he's warning Moscow that he will pull his troops out of the embattled city of Bakhmut in a matter of days due to lack of ammunition. In a new video posted to social media, Yevgeny Prigozhin points to what he says are the dead bodies of Wagner fighters and shouts obscenities at Russia's military leaders.
Вы думаете о том, что вы
You think you are the masters of this life? You think you can dispose of their lives? You think because you have warehouses full of ammunition that you have that right?
от снарядов?
The Kremlin is declining to comment, but Kyiv is calling the Wagner decision to withdraw from Bakhmut a possible turning point. CNN's Nick Robertson joins me now live in eastern Ukraine. Nick, given how many months we've been speaking about Bakhmut for, this seems like a very significant announcement. What's your assessment?
It seems to point at a significant rift within the military hierarchy, albeit that Yevgeny Prigozhin, Wagner boss, is not in the military structure at all. He has actually just in the past day or so recruited the deputy defense minister who was let go from his position only last week. So it does seem to indicate that he has some favor within the military hierarchy, but specifically in that video calling out the defense minister Sergei Shoigu, the army defense chief of staff Vasily Gerasimov, calling him out, laying it at their feet specifically that they're allowing his fighters to die. Now, Ukrainian officials, as you say, are saying perhaps if the Russians don't turn around their ammunition supply in Bakhmut, which they assess that Wagner has been there in the vanguard of that fight for a good part of the last 9 months, a significant reason, they say, why the Russians have been able to take so much ground in Bakhmut. They say if the Russians don't turn around that ammunition supply, then indeed this could be a turning point for Ukrainian forces. The assessment is that potentially Wagner here is, or Yevgeny Prigozhin and the company itself is recognizing that they are being so badly decimated, losing so many people. One Ukrainian official said if he is losing 100 a day, men, that's the level they see it at. If he is losing that many a day, he cannot sustain it, and this will break the Wagner organization, so he has no option to leave. But I think there's a telling line in what Yevgeny Prigozhin said later today, following that threat to pull out. He said, "We will go away to lick our wounds and will rise again when the Russian nation needs us," when the Russian nation. So he is appealing to others outside of the Kremlin. So this hints strongly of a significant rift that's really thrusting itself into public just when it appeared that Russia was getting closer to actually being able to take the whole of Bakhmut. That's now in question, and that's very significant for the Ukrainian counteroffensive that's coming as well.
Yeah, fascinating, Nick, seeing the domestic political turmoil playing out on the battlefield as well. CNN's Nick Robertson for us in eastern Ukraine. Thank you. On the heels of the alleged drone strike in the Kremlin, a warning today from the Russian Deputy Foreign Minister about worsening relations between Moscow and Washington. Sergei Rybakov says that the two countries are on the verge of open armed conflict. He tells state-run media that Washington has long been a direct party to the Ukrainian conflict, and he says that it seeks to destroy a sovereign Russia. Alex Marquardt joins me now from Washington with more on this. Alex, obviously this is a deeply terrifying statement to hear. We know that Russia's rhetoric can often be bellicose, but help us understand why it would even be in Russia's interest to make these unsubstantiated claims and essentially suggest they're on a warpath with the world's most powerful military.
Well, the simple answer is to justify some kind of escalation, increased attacks on Ukraine and Kyiv itself. This really is escalatory language, Bianca. It is extraordinary to hear Russia not just accuse the U.S. of really being the power behind Ukraine, but accuse the U.S. of having direct involvement, for having a hand in what the Kremlin has called an act of terrorism and an attempted assassination of the Russian president. At the same time, it is very much in line with what we have heard for the past 15 months of this war, that it is really the U.S. and NATO that are telling Ukraine what to do, and Russia is in fact fighting against all of NATO in their war in Ukraine. Now, of course, this has been forcefully rejected by the United States. The U.S. says they're still very much looking into what happened at the Kremlin 2 nights ago. They are poring over intelligence, but the White House has said quite forcefully that the U.S. of course had no hand in this, and have said what Russia is accusing them of are ludicrous lies. Take a listen to a bit more of the White House's John Kirby.
Look, I know there's been a lot of questions over the last 24 hours or so about this alleged drone attack at the Kremlin. We're still trying to gather information about what happened, and we just don't have conclusive evidence one way or the other. I know there's lots of questions, but we just don't have conclusive evidence. One thing I can tell you for certain is that the United States was not involved in this incident in any way, contrary to Mr. Peskov's lies. And that's what they are, just lies.
So Peskov, the Kremlin spokesman, was the first person to make these accusations. He did not present any evidence of any U.S. involvement. And of course, Bianca, we've heard Ukraine deny any involvement, not just publicly, President Zelensky himself denying it publicly, but privately, we are told that in conversations between Washington and Kyiv, that Ukrainian officials have told the White House that they had no role in this either. I was also told by a U.S. official that in those conversations with Ukrainian officials, that those Ukrainian officials appeared rather surprised and caught off guard by this. Bianca?
Alex Marquardt for us in Washington, thank you so much.